At the beginning of the film, we see a bounty man deep in the jungle. He is a biologist living far away from the city for his research. One day, during his research, he gets bitten by a poisonous snake. He panics, and his phone falls, leaving him unable to call for help. Desperately, he tries to suck the venom out of his hand, but it doesn't work. He goes home and even cuts the wound to drain the venom, but it is too late. The poison spreads through his body, and he starts experiencing strange hallucinations. He remains unconscious for several days. One day, a group of scientists comes to retrieve him. He is somewhat aware of their presence, still alive, but completely weak. He tries to call them, but his voice doesn't come out. The scientists, assuming that he isn't there, leave. The scene cuts to a few days later. His body had been slowly expelling the venom through the cut on his hand, and the residual effects on his brain begin to fade. However, he still experiences occasional hallucinations. Gaining his senses, he decides to go to the hospital in the city. He cleans his car and drives toward the city, but notices something strange. There are no vehicles on the roads. When he reaches the city, he is shocked to find that no one is alive. The buildings are abandoned. Panic sets in as he realizes a deadly pandemic has wiped out the entire population. Being a biologist, he quickly understands that he survived only because he had been away from civilization for so long. With no human population left, there is no government, no ownership. Everything is abandoned. His parents immediately come to mind, and he rushes to their home, only to find that they have been dead for days. Their bodies are in a terrible state of decomposition. Overcome with grief, he cries, but then gathers himself and digs graves outside his home to bury them. The next morning, he searches the entire city, but no other survivors are found. Realizing he cannot stay alone, he decides to travel to another city, Las Vegas. Gathering some essential supplies and a gun, he sets out. However, the bridge leading to Las Vegas is sealed. He gets frustrated and takes a longer route. When he finally reaches Las Vegas, he finds the same horror. Everyone is dead. Malls, hotels, casinos, all deserted. Exhausted, he checks into a luxury hotel, spending the night and indulging in expensive items since everything is now free for him. He loses hope of finding another human, but the next night, he encounters two other survivors. They, too, have managed to survive the pandemic. The woman shares her tragic story. She watched her family die over a video call and has lost all hope in life. The man, too, wishes to die, as he feels he cannot survive in such a lonely world. They spend the night together in the hotel, but by morning, the man's intentions seem dangerous to him. The man has a gun and plans to kill all three of them to make death easy. However, he wants to live, so he sneaks out. As he leaves, he hears gunshots behind him, meaning the other two ended their own lives. This tragic event breaks him further. He now truly feels like the last human on Earth. While driving back home, a lone dog appears in front of his car. Just like him, the dog is alone. He takes the dog as his companion, finding a new purpose to live. He starts adapting to his new life, reading survival books. Food and water are not a concern, as there is plenty of abundant supply, and he no longer needs to earn money. Every day, he roams the town, hoping to find other survivors, but returns disappointed each time. One day, while drinking tea by the window with his dog, the dog suddenly starts barking. The reason? It senses another human. In the distance, smoke is rising from a house, a clear sign that someone is there. Without wasting time, he gets into his car and heads toward the house. Inside, he finds a woman, Emma. She is frightened at first, but he reassures her that he means no harm. He, too, is alone and looking for other survivors. Hearing this, Emma allows him inside. From their conversation, we learn that a whole year has passed since the pandemic began. Both of them haven't seen another human in all this time. They are relieved to have found each other. Life in complete isolation was becoming unbearable. As humans are social beings, their mental state had started deteriorating from the loneliness. They decide to live together at his home, as it is close to a general store with ample food supplies. He is also stocked up on many essentials, making survival easier. Emma moves in with him. Life becomes better. They start fixing up his home, which he had neglected for the past year. She helps him clean up his appearance, and together, they renovate the house. They also realize that if they are the last two people alive, they must repopulate the world. At first, it was just a thought, but when he learns that Emma is pregnant, he becomes fearful. He worries whether their child can survive in this strange new world. Emma reassures him that everything will be fine. Being a biologist, he starts studying books on childbirth, knowing they will have to handle it alone. Meanwhile, they continue improving their home. He installs solar panels to generate electricity. As more time passes, the cities begin to resemble forests. Wild animals start roaming into urban areas, posing a threat. To protect themselves, they build a barricade around their house and keep weapons for safety. They also adopt many animals, which help with their needs and keep them occupied. With no humans around, nature flourishes, the environment becomes greener, and the air becomes cleaner. Their health improves. Life feels somewhat perfect until a new crisis arises. Out of nowhere, swarms of rats invade the city. He panics. To keep them away, he starts burning debris around the house. But that's only a temporary solution. Emma calms him, promising they will find a way. The next morning, he goes out and gathers many stray cats, releasing them around their home. The cats start hunting the rats, solving their problem. Finally, the day arrives when Emma gives birth. He handles the entire process himself, and they welcome a beautiful baby girl. This fills them with new hope. They start leaving messages across town, writing their home's address on walls, hoping that any surviving humans might find them. Days turn into years. 6 years later, while heading toward the jungle for some work, an animal suddenly jumps in front of his car. He gets out to check. It's still alive but in pain. He decides to put it out of its misery and shoots it. Unbeknownst to him, a girl watches this from afar. The sound of the gunshot frightens her, and she runs into the forest. He sees her running and chases after her. The girl believes he is dangerous, but he is not. He and Emma have been searching for survivors. When he offers her an apple, she realizes he means no harm. He invites her to his home, but she refuses to sit inside the car and instead chooses to ride in the trunk. At home, we see that over the years, Emma and he now have 2 children, and another baby is on the way. 2 more survivors, George and Marina, have also joined them after seeing their address in the town. They have all been living together for the past year, as they lack nothing. The girl he brought from the jungle still refuses to leave the trunk. She even spends the night inside it. The next morning, when Marina brings her food, she panics and throws it away. Marina calms her down and shares her own story. She and George wandered alone for months before finding them. She reassures the girl that this place is safe. Slowly, the girl starts opening up but still does not speak much or reveal her name. One day, Marina looks through her belongings and finds strange drawings along with a letter. From the letter, she learns the girl's name, Evie. The letter, written by Evie's mother, reveals a horrifying truth. During the pandemic, her father had assaulted her. As a result, she now fears every human she encounters. Her mother wrote the letter before dying, hoping that whoever finds Evie will take care of her. After learning this, everyone starts looking after Evie with extra care. That night, Emma gives birth to their 3rd child, bringing joy to the group. A year passes peacefully. One day, they receive news that someone has entered their area. All the people get scared and send the little children inside. All the adults come out with guns to check who has arrived. They realize that it is another group of survivors, consisting of a total of 4 people. These people had also reached here while following the address of Ish and Emma. Among them was a doctor, Molly, who told them that in all these years, she had only come across these 4 living humans, and now she was meeting Ish's family. Their appearance and conversations indicated that they were not a threat to anyone, so Ish and Emma decided to include them in their family. Besides, there was no shortage of resources here. Now, they could build a large society together. Ish explains the rules of survival in this world to the new members, telling them that they must always keep their weapons with them because this world has now become like a jungle. They could encounter wild animals at any time. Whenever they go out to gather supplies, they must move in groups. Otherwise, any wild animal or something else could harm them. After laying out these rules, the group sets out to collect supplies from the mall and hospital. Since Molly was a doctor, she gathered many essential medical supplies from the hospital that would help in treating everyone in the community. Years pass, and we see that the group has grown significantly, with many children now being part of their community. Other couples also had children. Their community was expanding, and Ish was educating all the children, teaching them how previous communities functioned and how humans survived. He was preparing them so that they wouldn't face difficulties in the future. Life was passing normally, with a dense jungle growing around their home. One day, a large lion enters their home from the jungle. Fortunately, Ish spotted it just in time. To protect his children, he rushed to face the lion. But before they could do anything, the lion attacked him viciously. Everyone panicked at the sight, and by the time they arrived, the lion had left. Emma, seeing Ish in such a terrible condition, became furious, grabbed a gun, and went into the jungle, where she shot and killed the lion. Fortunately, Molly and the rest of the group worked together to save Ish's life just in time. He required several weeks of treatment, but eventually he recovered completely. 17 years passed, and by then, all the children had grown into young adults. We see that Ish's eldest daughter, Hader, had developed a close bond with a boy from their group. Their friendship was strong, and no one in the community objected because they knew that they would eventually form relationships among themselves. Hader and the boy wanted to explore the world outside their town and search for other survivors. No one objected to this decision, and the community provided them with guns and essential supplies for their journey. Shortly after their departure, a new problem arose. While they had sufficient resources, they now faced a water shortage. When they checked the dam, they found that the water supply was running out, which could be a life-threatening issue. A few days later, another group of survivors arrived in their area. They had 2 trucks, but were running low on fuel. They requested oil from Ish in exchange for offering to solve their water problem. They claimed to have a drilling machine that could extract underground water. Ish found their offer reasonable and allowed them to stay in the community, but he warned his people to remain cautious, as these survivors could be dangerous. The group began drilling as per the deal, and after several days of hard work, water was finally extracted. Everyone was overjoyed. Once the deal was completed, Ish's people provided the newcomers with oil, and that night, they all celebrated together. By morning, the new survivors were supposed to leave. However, Ish noticed that the group's leader, Charlie, was acting suspiciously. Late at night, he saw Charlie coming out of a room while one of his men stood guard outside. Upon investigating, Ish discovered that Charlie had tortured Evie. Ish immediately informed the entire community. This was a serious threat. Evie revealed that Charlie had no intention of leaving because he had realized that there were abundant supplies and weapons here. Everyone panicked upon hearing this, and Ish decided that they had to kill Charlie. If they didn't, Charlie would wipe out their entire community, which had taken years to build. Some members were hesitant, arguing that with so few humans left in the world, killing another survivor would significantly reduce the population. But Ish convinced them that if they didn't kill Charlie, they themselves would be killed. The group devised a plan and surrounded Charlie from all sides. Before Charlie could say anything, Ish struck him down with an axe, killing him instantly. They then buried his body. After doing this, Ish felt extremely guilty. It was the first time he had killed someone, and that too, for survival. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong, as he was protecting his community, but he was still deeply troubled. In the morning, they informed Charlie's group about his death, explaining that he had tortured a girl from their community. Surprisingly, most of Charlie's group members weren't upset. Some even admitted that Charlie had abused the women in their own group as well, so they were relieved by his death, except for one of his close friends, who was furious. Ish then addressed Charlie's group, telling them that they had everything they needed and were welcome to stay in peace, except for Charlie's friend, as Ish sensed the same cruelty in him. Believing him to be a threat, they collectively decided to exile him. Initially, the man left, but after realizing that he couldn't survive alone, he attempted to return. However, Ish refused to accept him back, prioritizing the safety of their community. Meanwhile, the community's children were working on building a plane using old research. They believed they would perfect it in a few days, but before that could happen, another crisis struck. Many members of the community were infected by the same virus that had spread 20 years ago. The survivors had developed immunity over time, but now, the virus had returned. Molly had plenty of medicine and treated most of the infected individuals, but Ish's son was in critical condition. His worsening state deeply worried the entire community. Amid this crisis, Hader returned home alone, in tears. When everyone asked about her partner, she revealed a shocking story. While traveling, she and her partner had searched countless cities and houses for survivors, but found none. They left messages with their home address everywhere. Eventually, they encountered a man in the jungle who captured and killed Hader's partner, claiming it was revenge for Charlie's death. It was clear that the man was the same person whom Ish had exiled. Hader, in a desperate act of self-defense, killed him, fled back home. The community was devastated by this news. But before they could recover from their grief, Ish's sick son passed away. The tragedy didn't end there. Following his son's death, 3 more community members perished from the infection. This completely shattered Ish. He no longer wanted to live in this world. However, Emma stood by him, just as she had when he was alone. She reminded him that they had started from nothing, yet they had built a thriving community. She told him that they were responsible for repopulating the world, and that if he gave up, who would train the next generation? Her words gave Ish some strength. He climbed a mountain to watch the sunrise. The sunrise was vastly different from the past worlds. Earlier, nature's colors seemed dull, But now, everything felt vibrant. He realized that this was no longer the old world. It was a new one. He had been teaching his children how to survive in the old world, which was a mistake. Upon returning home, he gathered the children and gave a speech. We have been moving in the wrong direction, trying to live as if the old world still exists. But when that world no longer remains, why should we prepare for it? This is a new world, and we must adapt accordingly. From now on, you will learn what nature teaches you and what is essential for survival in this world. Communication had been cut off in this new world, so they decided to build their own network. They constructed a new radio system to strengthen their communication. Ish also began organizing social events, where children learned the importance of community and cooperation. He extended his efforts beyond his own people, starting to rebuild the abandoned city, restoring hotels, and planning to rehabilitate nearby towns as well. In the post-credits scene, we see Ish with his grandson, telling him the story of his life. He tells the boy, "This world belongs to your generation now. It is up to you to carry it forward." With these words, the story comes to an end.